My friend Dan, he's got a podcast, cause all comics need a podcast, and nobody had a podcast called The Art. My friend Dan, he's got a podcast, cause all comics need a podcast, and nobody had a podcast called The Art of Bombing. So Dan went out and bought a tape deck. Who knows why he bought a tape deck? Now podcasts don't get played on tape decks, but Dan is from the 80s. So hey there, all you funny jerks, come talk to Dan about your work. Tell him all about your worst times. It's The Art of Bombing. Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of The Art of Bombing. I am your host, Dan Bublitz Jr. As you can see, my cohort, Josh Shirley, is not with me. He is not in the screen because he is not here tonight. He scheduling conflict. He has to fly to Denver tomorrow very, very early, so he will not be joining us today. So let's get that out of the way. So, let's think about a moment of silence for Josh not being here. Okay, that was quick enough. He'll be back next time, though. He'll be back next time. So I'm floating solo today, just like the olden days. Welcome to The Art of Bombing, the podcast where I talk to comedians about their worst shows, and they get to tell their entertaining stories about those worst shows. And then we talk about what they learned from it. On today's episode, I have on today's show, I've got a great guest, a good friend of mine, Lee Bruns. He's a fantastic comedian from Watertown, South Dakota. He's also a writer. He writes about motorcycles, and he's a big motorcycle enthusiast. And he was on my other podcast, The Submerged, with Dan Bublitz Jr., and we talked about motorcycles. But today, because he's also a comedian, he's going to be joining me here on The Art of Bombing to talk about a bombing story and talk about comedy. And I'm excited to have him because he's a very good friend. He's been a friend of the podcast and a longtime supporter of this podcast pretty much since the beginning of this podcast. So it's very exciting to have him join us tonight. Before we get to that, real quick, wherever you're following the podcast, make sure, or wherever you're tuning in, make sure you follow and subscribe to the podcast, whatever platform, whether it's Amazon, whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you listen to this, make sure you subscribe. And another thing that would really help us out is if you gave us a 5-star rating and review. If you leave us a review, we might actually talk about it on one of the upcoming episodes of the podcast. You can find all our social media channels on our website, artofbombingpod.com. Go there, and then from there, you can follow us we're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on all the social medias. So check us out there. I don't have a whole lot today. This is going to be a short intro because I don't have my cohort with me, which is some people will probably think, oh, good, we don't need a long intro. And I appreciate your opinion, but sometimes we want a long intro. No, I'm kidding. We don't. But anyway, real quick, I got a couple shows coming up. I'm going to be in Spearfish September. I don't know why I'm thinking September. It's only April 29th. I will be in Spearfish, South Dakota at Iron Phoenix. And then April 30th, I will be in Rapid City at the Iron Phoenix. So April 29th and 30th, catch me out in the Black Hills running around slinging jokes. For all my information, you can visit my website, danbublitzcomedy.com. So check that out. Now, if you have questions during the show, go ahead and post your questions in the comments. Make sure you comment. Make sure you like this video, give us the heart or whatever reaction you would like. But if you have a question, put it in the comments. At the end of the show, we always do a Q&A where we answer some of those questions. So if you have a question, you can do that. If you want to leave us a comment or tell us a story of a time you bombed, because we can't get everybody on the podcast, you can go to podinbox.com/artofbombingpod and leave us a voice message. I know it asks if you want to subscribe for a dollar amount. That's not what it's for. If you just scroll down, you don't have to donate any money. That's just the way they have their website set up. You just scroll down, hit the microphone icon, and you can leave us a voice message. So if you want to, give us a show compliment, or maybe you want to leave us some constructive criticism or tell us a story, any of that can be done here. In fact, I'm putting a call of action out there. Next month, we are celebrating our 5th year. That's right. The Art of Bombing podcast started in May of 2017. That means May of 2022 is our 5-year anniversary. So here's my call to action. Go to podinbox.com/artofbombingpod and leave us a voice message to celebrate 5 years. Tell us how 5 years of this podcast has helped you and your comedy, or what you enjoy about this podcast. And we might put together a little reel of voice messages to play on the 5-year anniversary show, which will be coming up in May. So check that out if you don't mind. Now, if you do want to support the show financially, you can do that as well. We do have our Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/artofbombingpod to check that out. But like I said, the best way to support this show, tell a friend about it, share it on social media, check out our YouTube page, like our videos, like our content, leave us a 5-star rating, leave us a review wherever you listen to the podcast. That's the best way, is to share and leave feedback. Engage with the podcast. Engage. That's the best way. All right. That's enough of the housekeeping. That's enough of the babbling. We're going to get into this live stream, live podcast with my good friend Lee Bruns. So let's get to the show and let's check out. Here we go. Well, here's Lee's stand-up soundbite.
And now it's time for the stand-up soundbite.
Oh, man. I like being back in Sioux Falls. It's been a while since I was here. Last time I came down to Sioux Falls, I jumped on my motorcycle. I came down here for a Sunday morning breakfast at MB Haskett's. Yeah. There was a waitress there that really caught my attention because she had pants that fit. She was crouching down, she was reaching up, she was working the tables, and her pants stayed exactly where they were supposed to. I live in a house with 3 women, so finding pants that fit is a big deal. So I wanted to ask this woman about her pants, but I'm a 51-year-old fat guy, and I am not allowed to ask 19-year-old college girls about their pants. So I saw this 40-year-old woman sitting off to one side. I said, "Excuse me, ma'am. Could you do me a favor? I'd like to get more information about that waitress's pants." And she looked me up and down and said, "I have a taser." So he tased the waitress. Checked the tag on her pants. It said guess, so we still don't know. But I used to travel a lot by motorcycle. I traveled all over the countryside with guys by the name of like Butch and Dutch and Bandit and Muskrat and Lefty. Yeah, I love those guys. I learned a lot of rules about nicknames. I learned rule number 1, you're not allowed to give yourself a nickname. Otherwise, everyone would be called Bandit. Rule number 2 is never ask for a nickname or you'll get a bad nickname. Just ask Syphilis Eric.
Welcome to the show, Lee. How are you?
Oh, I'm super, Dan. Always nice talking to you.
Oh, likewise. I love that. I love that joke of yours, the trying to get the pant size. It's one of my favorite jokes.
That is so close to the reality of what actually went down.
Knowing
MB
you
Haskett.
as personally as I do, I believe that. Not for a second do I think that was made up. I believe that to be all true. Even tasing the waitress.
Yeah. Well, that is something that I always find kind of neat. You'd have something go down, and you just sit there and you think it over, and boy, that was kind of a quirky situation, and it evolves over time and becomes a joke. The reality of what happened that day was me standing there going, because they had all these low waist, these low rise jeans, right? And my daughter and my wife, they're small people, they're thin people but tall, and they can never find pants that fit. They always do those low rise jeans. And this waitress had pants that fit, and they're perfect. I know I can't talk to her, and I see this woman off to one side, and I go, "How is this conversation going to go down?" So the reality was, I just got up and left and never did ask anyone. But yeah, so my 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 wife and my children still don't have properly fitting pants because they don't make pants for tall, thin women.
Oh, well, hey, if you're a seamstress or you're into making fashion clothes, Lee could use some pants that would fit his wife and children. Maybe we can put a call to action out there.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, too funny. Oh, well, hey, yeah, well, this is the art of bombing. I'm glad to have you. It's been in the making because you've been a friend of the show for a long time. Some people, if they follow our Twitter, they know that very well. You helped us get Alonzo Bowden. I wouldn't have got him on here had it not been for you. Granted, that was a long time ago, but still, you've also tagged some other people on Twitter that have ended up becoming guests on the show because of that. So thank you for that.
Well, sure. Yeah, Alonzo's a motorcycle guy, so there's always that connection.
Yep. Oh yeah, I'm sure. I forget. Oh yeah, I was just talking to a friend on Sunday. I was in Lincoln, and he was trying to get Alonzo to do his eighth anniversary show because Alonzo was just there back in August down in Lincoln and did a show with him, and we were talking about Alonzo. And I mentioned I was like, how I got him was through you and your motorcycle connection, all that long-winded stuff that's not for this podcast. Did you have any shows this last weekend?
Yeah, I went up to Aberdeen and worked with Mike Marvell at the Hub City. What do they call that? The
Hub City Event Center.
There you go, Hub City Event Center with Mike, and I got to meet Mike, and John Boone runs the show up there. Just a lot of fun, amazing audience, just the best audience. Just had such a good time up there.
Yeah, I love that venue too. That is a great venue. I did a show there back in March, I think. March or February? Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, March. I believe it was. Yeah, it was March. Man, time is just slipping away from me. I can't remember when I did what.
The audio of that room and the seating and the green room and how you come through the stage to enter the stage, just that whole venue is just so great to perform at.
Oh, absolutely. And I really love the decor too on the stage. It's just fantastic. So if you're ever in Aberdeen, South Dakota, on a Friday when they're doing a comedy show, or a Saturday, or whenever they do a comedy show there, go check out Hub City Event Center and go check out a comedy show there. Another good way to find out more about that is to find John Boone on the old interwebs. And, I believe it's John Boone Trivia Host now. That's his Facebook page. But go check that out, and you can find all his comedy shows that he's producing, because he's producing some great shows there in Aberdeen. How did the show go for you? How did you feel about it?
Well, as usual, I'll perform, and then I'll have the clock starts when I walk off the stage, and I'll feel great. And then it's how long can I make it before the self-loathing kicks in, and all I can think about is the jokes that I had intended to tell and forgot. And I don't think once in 6 years of doing this that I've actually remembered to tell every single joke that I planned on telling. Not once, Dan, have I hit every joke that I planned on telling.
Well, and that happens. I mean, that's part of comedy. You're going to have that.
The show went great.
I mean, that's either good or bad in the sense that if you forget to do a joke, but you're still making your time and it's still a good set, then I mean, that's a good thing. On the other hand, if you're skipping jokes and you're cutting your time short and it's not a good set, then it's definitely bad that you're leaving some stuff out.
Yeah, overall, and then I added some on the fly that hit real well, and it was a really great show. But I'm not going to claim that I don't have mental health issues. So the clock starts when I walk off stage and I feel great. And how long into the next day or the day after before I start nitpicking myself and the imposter syndrome sets in and what am I doing and what makes me think
Wait a
I'm
minute. Are
qualified
you
to do
telling
this?
me it takes a day or 2 for that to set in?
Yeah.
Wow, I wish I was you.
If I can
Hell, I
make it
get
all
off
the way
sta
to Sunday afternoon, then I'm doing
I
great.
I barely make it off the stage, and I'm already thinking about what I did wrong or what I
Yeah.
missed. Even
Yeah.
on a good set, I'm like, "Oh, I didn't tell that joke. I told this joke backwards. I forgot to do this joke that led to this callback." Like, I'm thinking about it all, like, right away.
Right. A few weeks ago, we had Mike Brody, and I was in the feature spot, and I ended up only at 20 minutes because I was not feeling very well at all and was attempting to not pass out on stage. But I don't think the audience knew. But I had
Oh,
intended
wow.
to do 30, but I did 20. And you had to stop and catch my breath a few times. I was having a bit of a medical emergency, but I covered, Dan. Nobody knew.
Did you end up going to the doctor or anything to figure
I
out?
did not. It's just residuals from having COVID and my
Oh.
lung problems. I had a lung fungus and I had a lot of lung damage from that. So COVID did not help.
Oh, I didn't know. I guess I didn't know you had COVID.
Oh
So
yeah.
I'm glad you're feeling better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Glad you're still here.
Eh, death would have been a real inconvenience to find a new feature that short of, you know.
Yeah, right? Yeah. You would have had to do a lot of work. I mean, even in the
Right, right.
afterlife, you wouldn't be able to
Yeah.
rest eternally. You would have had to figure out who was going to fill in for you.
Right. We had you down for 30. You've got to do your 30.
Whether it's from here or from the beyond, you're putting in your time.
Just 30 minutes of the lights flickering is all I can get.
Well, Mike Brody's into ghosts and stuff, so if you would have been doing a feature set as a ghost, he would have been into
Yeah.
that. It
He
would
is
have been
so he is so great to work with. What a guy.
yeah, I'm glad that show worked out. I'm glad that was a good show. Uh, definitely good that, you got to have him and you got a venue and stuff because you sold out too, which is amazing.
Yeah, we sold out a week in advance. The venue never even posted it on their Facebook page prior to the day of the event. So that was me pushing it on the Facebook pages that I run and Twitter. But yeah, we sold out a week in advance. And knowing it was Mike Brody, I was shocked that it didn't sell out 2-3 weeks in advance because man, Mike puts on an amazing show. He's just an amazing headliner.
Yeah. Wow, well, and that's amazing too that you sold out without the help of the venue. I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty incredible itself. And without like paid advertising or anything like that, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, $10 worth of flyers I hung all over town at the convenience stores and the laundromats and the car washes. That was the entire advertising budget was $10.
Oh man, that's amazing. That's a good return on your investment.
Yeah,
Good ROI there. Good ROI there. Well,
yeah.
this podcast isn't about good shows. I mean, it is. We do talk about them, but we want to talk about shows that, you know, where you thought you bombed or it was a bad show because those are the fun shows to
Oh
talk
yeah,
about. And
yeah.
I would
Oh,
love to hear the story that you have for us tonight.
oh, yeah. That one is painful. It still haunts me. Boss's Comedy Club in Sioux Falls when they're at the Ramcota there, and it's a massive, massive room, and all the chairs and tables are all set out, and about 15 people come to the show. I'm in the feature spot, and Luke Johnson goes up, and he's just a great host, and he fired the 15 people up, and then he calls me up, and from the stage all 15 people in the room are beyond the lights. So I've got the spots on me and this massive room and all 15 people. There's like 6 off to my right somewhere that I can't see in the darkness, and another 6 off to my left that I can't see, and the rest are way back straight up the middle, and I cannot see or hear anyone. and I go into my set. Now, some comics who really have their stuff together, they could perform for an empty room as if it was Carnegie Hall, and I'm not that good. So I was completely lacking any and all audience feedback, and started stammering and stumbling over my material, and I I I was short on time. I think it came in at a little over 20 minutes, and again I was aiming for 30. But if they were laughing, I couldn't hear them, and I know the material where there was some laughter, but I'm sure I started onto the next bit um, right while they were laughing, stepped all over the laugh pauses because I could not hear them, I could not see them, and Luke thought it was hilarious watching me melt on stage. Comics are the funniest thing to other comics is watching each other tank. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're cruel to each other like that. Our favorite thing is watching another comic bomb like right in front of our eyes.
Yeah. So Luke didn't hold a grudge, but yeah, it was painful. And then, I got off and the headliner went up, and he didn't have a great set either. Maybe it would have been better if the lights were up where I could at least see everyone, but he didn't have a great set either. But yeah, the lights were strong, the room was huge, and the audience was small, and I did not have the skills to perform without that audience feedback. And oh, I sweated through my shirt. And that one still haunts me because I was trying to make a good impression on Luke because he books all the shows in Sioux Falls.
Yeah, that's always the worst when you're trying to make an impression and then it doesn't go as well as you would like. But again, some of those elements, some of the situations there, it's kind of on the club. I really find it annoying when clubs just let people sit wherever. They're like, oh, here's a big, huge room. Go ahead and sit all the way in the back so there's 100 yards between you and the stage. That'll be great. It's like, no, if you do assigned seating. Make people sit there. If there's only 15 people, all the 15 people need to be sitting towards the front, and then you fill the back. Close that back section off,
Yeah.
And there's so many clubs that do that where they just let people sit wherever, and it's like I said, it annoys me.
Yeah. Oh, that room was cavernous. It was
Yeah,
just so huge. And the ceilings must have been 30 foot tall. Just these, it's like a carpeted auditorium. Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They're huge, and it's easy to lose laughs in a room like that, even if unless it's super full. But even when it's full, because they're so tall. I just did a show last weekend at a winery, and they had this beautiful event hall and really tall ceilings. And I thought, oh man, this is not going to be good. But then they had sound panels all over to help keep the sound in, so the acoustics were really good in there. So it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be as far as like losing the laughter and stuff. But that does
Yeah.
happen a lot in those big rooms. Easy to lose that laughter.
I did another show in Aberdeen, and it was a good show, other than the show went on in this big concrete room where the air compressor for their uh, refrigeration units were. So
Oh no.
every now and then the compressor would kick in, and all the PA in the world wasn't keeping up with that air compressor when that thing kicked in.
Yeah, that's always the worst when that happens. When you're like especially when there's like noise from something that's out of the control.
Yeah.
I did a
But
show.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say I did a show at a brewery, and it was the first time they were doing a show there. And when the guy decided to do a show there, he didn't know about this, but they have a fan that kicks on ever so often. So like, yeah, we're doing a show, and then all of a sudden a fan just kicks on.
Yeah. I think it's super the way the breweries and wineries have gotten into doing comedy shows, though. That's really neat.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. They can definitely make great venues for comedy. I mean, and some can make not so great. It really depends on the amount of effort that's put into putting on the show. Most of the places that I perform, though, as far as breweries and wineries have been pretty good. Most places have been doing a good job, so that's good.
Uh, I did I do a zoo show every year where we actually perform at the local zoo as part of a fundraiser. And the audience will be next to a food vendor. So when people get their ribs, well, now they need someplace to sit down and eat their ribs. And oh, look at all these chairs right in front of our stage. So it's not quite hostage comedy, but they're sitting down to eat their ribs, and you start trying to make them laugh while they're eating their ribs.
That's
And
funny.
then every now and then
It's
the
not
lemurs will
hostage
kick in.
comedy. It's called trickery comedy. They think they're gonna sit down and eat their ribs, and then
Yeah,
all of a sudden there's a comedy show. There's
that's a fun show to do. Uh, the audience is constantly changing, so 10
Yep.
minutes later you've got a whole new mix of people, and
So
every
do
now
you
and then
just
the
rotate
lemurs will just
comics all night? How do you do that?
yeah, we'll have three of us. I've had Timmy Williams, I've had Zach. Did Zach Dresch come? I'm trying to remember who all we've had. Luke Johnson, Alicia Rain, and yeah, we just each do a little set, and then the next people step in. You do 5 or 10 minutes, then the next comic will step up and do 5 or 10. And if there's no one sitting there, you just sit back and eat some ribs, and it's beer and wine sampling all around the zoo, and they'll have different musical acts spaced around the zoo. But yeah, when they get over by the dinosaur exhibit, they're ours. And
I love it. And how long do you have to do that? Like in a night? Like how long is the event?
2 hours.
2 hours. Oh, okay. So you're just rotating 3 comics for 2 hours ish.
Yep. And
Oh, that's
and then
cool.
when you're not on stage, you feel welcome to wander around and try some of the stuff out and check out the music and stuff, and then come back over, and yeah, we have a good time. And
Do you
it's not
just do the
huge
same
pay.
jokes over and over?
Yeah.
Or do
Oh
you
yeah.
try to
Try it.
like
No, I try it a little different on your next group as they pass through. Yeah. But callbacks are impossible.
unless you have a dedicated fan that keeps coming back,
Right.
or doesn't leave.
Yeah. But
You
the
do the
like the
callback for the one person, and we're like, "That was just for you."
the people at the booth next to us who had the ribs or the kolache or whatever, the food vendor that'll be near us, and the alcohol. So they'll put entertainment, alcohol. They'll do one beer, one wine, um, like ribs or some sort of a substance food, and then a dessert. And it'll be little pods, and then an entertainment form, be it music or in our case comedy. And then throughout the zoo, there'll be pods like that. So the other vendors, they're not charging. It's all included in your ticket price when you
Yeah.
get in the front door. They're hearing you do the same jokes to different people all night long.
Yeah, so they're probably getting it. They're probably like, "Oh my god, this again. This is
bit
like
again.
working in a mall, listening to the mall radio. It's just on loop."
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. That's great. It's funny because when you first started that, where you were like, they'll have like one beer, one wine. I was like, man, this sounds like a really bad George Thorogood song. It's like one beer, one wine,
Wine.
one comedian,
One rack of
killing time.
ribs. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
These
Well,
ribs.
now
Is this lemur? Is this lemur? Tastes like lemur.
Oh, that's great. That's a good time. That sounds like a good time. Or that at least has the potential to have a good time. Now,
Yeah.
going back to the when the set at Bosses,
Yeah.
what do you feel that you could have did differently, or and what do you? I mean, when you have a bad set like that, what are you trying to do to learn from it and get better?
Well, I'm trying to understand that if I've performed the same set successfully in front of an audience where I've got feedback, I should know the timing so that I can assume they are laughing, whether I can hear them or not, and pause appropriately. And if you can't hear the audience, then just go through your own head. Okay, I can't hear the audience. And I practice the set into a microphone and a recording device in my garage many times. Well, do that. Put the same effort of performance into it, but understand and just be aware that you cannot rely on audience feedback. The audience feedback has to be imagined, and you have to remember it because you've done this material in front of live audiences. You know where it's going to hit and what's going to hit and how much time you need to pause. And if you need to actually count in your head 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, then do it.
What
But
just real quick going on that where you know your material. What goes through your head when a joke doesn't land that you think should?
well, I've got some, and it's always fascinated. I've got a chicken joke, and you think, oh, it's just a chicken joke. But the substance of the chicken joke is a real societal commentary, but it's a chicken joke. and, and it never hits the same way twice. And it'll hit differently depending on the ethnic makeup, the audience. So that's a joke that'll always hit to some degree, but it's going to hit different people differently. So I don't come in presenting that material with an expectation because it might get silence. It might get a real good laugh. It might get a laugh from someone that I don't think should laugh at that. Or if I think you're laughing for the wrong reason, you don't get it. Yeah. But I guess it's and then some of it is knowing the audience. If we're doing an audience of elderly dairy farmers in Goodwin, South Dakota, okay, well I know going in the stuff about eating my dog is not going to probably go over that well to elderly dairy farmers.
Yeah, because you should be talking about eating cows.
Eating cows, exactly.
Gotta get on their level. But that's good. So you kind of try to read the audience too, like
Yeah,
beforehand, so you kind of have a better understanding of how to expect a joke to land.
yeah, and there's some. Uh, you and I did a show up in Aberdeen at the Red Rooster Coffee House, and that to me was my favorite show of all time because I finally got to do all the Special Olympics jokes to a bunch of the Special Olympics athletes. They loved that material more than anyone else because it's inclusive. These are people who often are the punchline of a joke, and none of my Special Olympics material involves the athletes themselves being the punchline. The punchline is always how much better athletes they are than me.
Hmm. Yep.
And
Or
being
making
able to
fun of other parents and stuff.
Right. So being able to perform that material to people with cognitive disabilities was a real treat for me because they know all about the functions of Special Olympics and they loved that show. And I got more joy from performing for those people up there at that show you asked me to help you with there than any other show I've ever done.
Oh, that's amazing. That's great. I'm glad that I was able to help with that opportunity.
Yeah, that was great.
I mean, it was just to me, it was just a show, obviously, because I didn't know who was going to be there, but I mean, I
Yeah.
had a pretty good idea because I knew the guy who owns the venue, and I know that he does a lot in that community with people with special needs and things like
Yep.
that. So, like, he's a big advocate for that. But yeah, but that's awesome. So, kind of going off of that, what's your dream audience? If you pick your audience, if you could hand pick an audience for Lee Bruns, what's that
Yeah.
audience? Is
I
it
would
that
love to
audience
perform.
or
That is. I would love to perform for uh the Special Olympics has a big banquet every year, and but it would be for the adults. So there's a lot you can join Special Olympics and start participating at age 8. And there's a lot of the 8-year-olds to 21-year-olds that aren't going to get some of the jokes. And there's a couple of jokes that maybe aren't appropriate for people under the age of 18. But the annual banquet for Special Olympics would be a really really neat treat. You've got coaches, you've got parents, you've got the adults with disabilities, and I think that would just be a fantastic show. They would really enjoy that,
oh
and
well,
they're
you need to make that happen.
appreciative audience,
Manifest
such an
that.
appreciative audience. Yeah.
Manifest that. You put that out in the universe, and hopefully you can make that come true.
Yeah.
That would be a fun show. That would definitely you could definitely
Oh
have a
yeah.
good time with that. Where do they do the banquet, or does it change?
They try to do it every year during the um, bowling, because bowling has the highest participation of any of the Special Olympics activities, Special Olympic sports. So when they have the state bowling tournament in Aberdeen is when they'll usually have the banquet. I think they had it one year during the softball. Uh, the softball. I'm stuck on the word where all the teams
Tournament?
compete. That's the word, Dan. Good, Dan.
A tournament?
Tournament. A tournament. Yeah, the big softball tournament for Special Olympics. I think they had it there one year, but it's wherever they're going to have the big state tournament. And bowling gets the highest participation, so it works out well. They have a big dance and a presentation banquet.
Cool. That's awesome. But that just depends on where they're having it.
Right.
The
Bowling
event,
is
right? So it
usually in
does really.
Aberdeen because
Oh,
Aberdeen is
okay.
the biggest bowling facility in the state.
Oh, really? How
35
many
lane.
how
Yeah.
many lanes do they have out there?
35, 36 lanes, something like
Oh,
that.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Guess I didn't know that. I just know in my hometown we could support 2 bowling alleys. So, I came from a small town.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Watertown used to have a second bowling alley, but couldn't keep it afloat. So we're down to just Tommy's at 10 lanes. But they will have the unified tournament at Tommy's every now and then. Unified sports with Special Olympics is where a special needs athlete will team up with another individual. And bocce ball is one where they do unified sports. But unified sports are great because it allows people with disabilities to team up and participate in sports with someone who doesn't have a
Oh,
disability.
that's
So,
cool. I guess I
yeah,
didn't know
unified sports are great.
that's what unified was.
Yep.
I learned something. I learned something. That's awesome. I didn't know they did stuff like that. That's really cool. That
Yeah,
is
they
super.
just got started. They've added javelin throwing to the summer games now,
Ooh.
and yeah, yeah. I
Ooh.
just like people go, "Wow, Special Olympics javelin throwing
Yeah,
seems
I'm like,
like a
ooh.
great idea." No, they're a special. It's called a mini jav, and it's yeah. I haven't got to participate with that yet, but I'm all
It's
for
it's called a
chuck.
it's called a mini jab. So it's lawn darts. No.
We're gonna sharpen that right up there.
Just
Yeah,
that's funny.
yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, now what do you try to do? Like I know we touched on it a little bit earlier about analyzing and stuff. What are things that you try to do, to analyze your sets or, you talked about rehearsing. Obviously, that's a good way to help kind of getting your sets timed out. But
Yep.
is there anything else you try to do to analyze and try to get better from one set to the
Right.
next?
Um, Timing and if you're I'll record my sets. I will sit down in the garage and I'll go through set. I can read through a set list 1,000 times, but physically sit down with a microphone and record your set. And rarely do I actually go back through and listen to it again. But
Yeah, I'm the
if I
same way.
if I get through 6 jokes and flub one, start from square one. And until you can go completely through and know where your laugh pauses need to be. You need to plan for laugh pauses. I had a joke for the longest time, and I just had to stop and realize you're starting the next joke and talking right over your laugh. And once you do that a couple times, the audience will stop laughing because they know that you're going to get on to the next bit. They might be having a great time. And then,
Yeah,
there's a
absolutely.
practical reality is when you're there to do 30 minutes and you can let the audience burn up some of those minutes, let them.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Let them have them. 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
Now, you're talking about like rehearsing and timing your set out. Do you do you ever get thrown off when they laugh at the wrong time? Like I know you have the spots where you're like, "Oh, this is where they're supposed to laugh," but I don't know how it's been for you, but I've had situations where I'll say the setup and get good laughs, and I'm like, that's not even the punchline yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to modify some stuff because I was just intending a setup, and they've so consistently laughed at the setup that now I've adapted to that over time. Okay, well, that's, to me it was nothing, but to the audience they really enjoyed it. So okay, well, give them an extra 30 seconds there, let them catch up, let them catch their breath.
Well,
And
if they're
on
laughing
stage,
consistently at the setup, that to me sounds like a punchline.
yeah, there's one joke that started off as just one punchline, but now there's 6 laugh points within that one longer. Obviously, it's more of a story, but there's 6 points in there.
Yep.
And then if you've got a strong joke, how you structure your set. Don't try. It doesn't work for me. Now, I'm not going to speak in absolutes. I know what works for me, which is, here's my real strong joke. All right, I'm going to follow it up with one I know is, oh, it's a 4 out of 5. I'll back that one up and let them catch their breath. I've gotten better at stopping and just taking a drink of water. I've got my bottle of water up there, catch my breath, get a drink of water, and start again. And for me, it's always about slowing down. And
Well, and I think that's important. There's a lot, especially when you're not doing well. A lot of comics they have a tendency to speed up. Guilty of it myself. I know I've done this. Probably do it from time to time when a set's not going good. I'll kind of speed up, and that's easy to burn through your material and then not fulfill your whole time or whatever. So you do have to just sit in it, whether it's a laugh break or an awkward moment of silence. You just gotta let it go.
I was hosting a show. It's been a couple years ago now, and I won't say the feature's name because he's a fantastic comic, and I don't want to damage his reputation at all. But he got up and was having a horrible set. The stuff he was throwing out was just a bit much for the cattle farmers in the small town in South Dakota we were in. It was, it was and religious references that weren't going over well with the churchgoers. And he had so much self-awareness, and he deliberately cut himself short so that when he handed the mic off to the headliner, he wasn't going to hand off a cold audience. And I've seen him just kill enough times where that self-awareness to go, wow, this just isn't working for me. Let me cut my losses, not damage the show for the headliner. And he cut himself down to about 20 minutes. But
yeah,
it wasn't accidental. He didn't just run out of material.
No, he just knew he didn't have any
smart.
material that he could do. Yeah, yep. Yeah, if you don't have, and that's that's why you need to make sure you have material, so that sometimes you need to be able to change on the fly, and that's why they kind of say, if you're gonna be a MC, you should be able to feature, and if you're gonna feature, you should be able to headline, because you need to have that extra time, not just for being able to switch it up for an audience, but if you fall into that position where suddenly the headliner doesn't show up, that kind of thing. But now you're talking a little bit about set construction. What do you kind of think about when you're setting up your a set list? How do you try to construct a set?
I'm telling a story from beginning to end. So as I'm going, you've seen me perform enough. I'm going to talk about my motorcycle stuff early, and then not bring up my family. And then once I get into my family, I go down the family members. But it all, for me personally, it all from beginning to end, all strings together into one long story. So if I need a longer set, I'm adding stuff to the story. If I need a shorter set, all right, well, I'm not going to talk about the chickens, or I'm not going to talk about the tortoise, or I'm not going to talk about the snake. We have way too many pets here. This is
sounds like that zoo show you were talking about is just your house.
So maybe I won't talk about the
street festival.
But by having that basic framework of what my set is going to be, and then being able to expand it or contract it as needed, depending on what my job is. Am I there as a host and an opener? Or am I there as a feature? Because those are all valuable parts. But if I'm going out there as a host and an opener, okay, well then I'm going to be doing 10 minutes, maybe 15. If I'm going out there as a feature, I need to do 30. Between 20 and 30. So how I fill my framework, and I know what I want to close on, and before I go up, I turn to whoever's going in after me and I tell them what my closer is so that they're ready. They know, oh, when he pulls out the harmonica, I got to be ready to go. Or
Yep.
when you when you see Skylar Bulks jack the mic stand up to 9 feet tall, Skylar's getting ready to wrap it up.
Yeah. Well, and that's something too that I kind of try to do is when I always ask the person going before me if I think to do it, I try to remember to ask them what they're closing on so I can be ready. Because talk about putting awkwardness into a show when one comic wraps up and the next one isn't ready to go.
Yeah. Did a
Yeah.
show one time where the feature decided to go outside for a smoke, wasn't in the room. And the opener, he finished up and I had to go back up. And thankfully I was hosting and I went back up and started filling. So it was a weirdly structured show, but I filled time until the feature stepped back into the building.
Mm-hmm. But still, shouldn't have to. Comics should be ready, but it happens.
Well, yeah, I just don't hire him anymore. That's
that's what happens, unfortunately, when you're that comic that isn't paying attention and being professional on a show. You're going to lose work in the future. It's unfortunate, but it's part of our business. Now we're going to start wrapping up with some of the fun stuff I like to do. So, just for the people watching, thank you guys for tuning in. If you have questions, go ahead and put them in the comments because we're going to do the next couple of we're going to do a few questions here, the wrap up stuff. Excuse me, and then we're going to do the Q&A if there are questions. So if you have questions wherever you're watching, just put it in the comment and we'll do that. Like I said, I like to do some fun stuff at the end. You're familiar, you listen to the podcast, so you already know kind of what's coming up. So we have the Art of Bombing playlist on Spotify, which is the Get Pumped comedy list. Doesn't have to get you pumped for comedy, but just in general. What's the song that you would like to add to our playlist?
Surfing with the Alien by Joe Satriani.
Surfing with the Alien by Joe
Satriani.
All right. Surfing with the Alien. Write that down. Take that note.
I bet you even know the lyrics.
Maybe. Probably.
Yeah, you can sing along.
Can I? I suppose it's just surfing with an alien.
Yeah.
The title, probably.
Yeah. That's it.
Oh, that's great. All right, I got that down. Perfect. And then we talk about, you have to talk about a bad show that you did and, the bombing or not having a good show. But I like to end on a positive show. I know you already talked about the gig that we did together as one of your all-time favorite shows, but is there another show that's been one of your best performances or favorite gigs?
Yeah, Dave Huntsberger, who's out of Los Angeles, and he was on the Professor Blastoff podcast. He's on Allison Rosen's new best friend, his own podcast, The Space Cave. Big fan of Dave Huntsberger. Timmy Williams worked with him out in LA, but Dave was performing a show at the Bug Theater in Denver, and I piped up with, hey, on Twitter, hey, Dave, it's only $89 airfare from Denver to Watertown, South Dakota. And Dave said, sure, I'll do that. So we did 2 shows back to back, 75 seats per, and moved them through and got to work with Dave for 2 shows right here in Watertown, South Dakota. So yeah, opening and hosting for Dave Huntsberger and Timmy Williams right here in Watertown, 2 shows like that. That was just really special. That was back in 2019.
Oh,
And
that's awesome. That's
yeah.
awesome. Well, and hopefully you'll be able to continue to do stuff like that. I know you've really worked hard at curating comedy in Watertown and getting some great shows. So, you know, I guess I was gonna say congratulations, but it's more like power to Lee. I guess it's not really a congratulations. It's more of a thank you for your service. There we go.
Well,
for, for doing that.
it doesn't happen. It doesn't just happen. Someone has to grab the reins. So before I even started performing, I spent at least 5 years making notes of jokes and putting together my material and paying attention and listening to the Art of Bombing and listening to the Greg Fitzsimmons podcast and taking notes on the structure and the how-tos and asking questions, so that the very first show we did, and even the very first time I ever got on stage as a comic, I think I had some advantages there that a lot of people don't.
Mhm.
Um, they're available to everyone if people are willing to listen to the pros and the experienced veterans and take advice from them, and don't think you can skip the process. Respect the process, respect the craft, and spend your time at the open mics, spend your time as a host, spend your time as an opener, and work your way up, and don't try to short the process. um, Make those connections, uh, and in my case, the only way I was going to get to perform was if I put on a show. But I
Mhm.
also know that I need to start, so I was hosting and I was opening and I was putting on open mics, and over time, um, it's worked out okay.
That's good. You know, that's something we share, is that we both had to do that because when I started comedy, I started in Watertown, South Dakota. And I did the same thing. I started hosting open mics in Watertown. I started putting on shows in Watertown, and doing that kind of stuff while I was there. And, granted, I didn't stay there very long after I started comedy. I moved right away. But for the first 6 months of my comedy career, I spent trying to do stuff in Watertown,
Yeah.
getting something going, and then I passed the reins to some other people, and then it just went away until you stepped in, and now we've got comedy in Watertown again. So there we go. All right, the last thing I like to do is pick a number. You're going to pick a number between 1 and 20, and I'm going to ask you a corresponding question that may or may not be related to comedy.
Okay, 12.
12 it is. What book had the most significant impact on you?
Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's nothing to do, very little to do with Zen, and even less to do with motorcycle maintenance. It it's about your approach to quality and problem solving and perspective, and it, to this day, it's just a fantastic read. A story about a fellow and his son traveling on their Honda from Minnesota to the East Coast, as the author horribly overthinks the concept of quality, driving himself insane in the process. So it's a comedy, you know.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, it does sound pretty good. It sounds pretty good. All right. Well, that's everything we're gonna do here. I'm gonna leave it open for just a few minutes. If you have a question, get them in there, or we're gonna get this podcast wrapped up. Thanks, Lee, so much for joining us. While we're waiting for some questions, where would you like to point people? Where can people? What are the things you want to plug and have people check out?
Sure. Follow me on Twitter, Real Lee Bruns on Twitter. And we've got a show coming up with Zach Dresch at Goodwin Lodge on May 21st. So hope to see everyone there in Goodwin, South Dakota. I'll be hosting and opening for Zach Dresch and Goodwin, South Dakota. So that's a great one. But just, yeah, follow me on Twitter, Real Lee Bruns on
All
Twitter.
right. And then you got his website, leebruns.com. Also on Facebook, you got Watertown Live Entertainment, which is a Facebook page you run. Is that correct?
Yeah, Watertown Live Entertainment. And this is not comedy related, but the Little Free Produce Stand program. Uh, the produce stands all over the country that we started, and it grew legs where gardeners, when they grow excess produce, can put their excess produce on these garden stands all over the US to share it with people to keep it out of the landfills. And if you've got extra produce, extra carrots, extra tomatoes, cucumbers, whatever you've got too much of, put it on the Little Free Produce Stand and move that along to somebody that wants to eat it. LittleFreeProduceStand.com, Little Free Produce Stand on Facebook. And it's not comedy related at all, but I really like the Little
No,
Free
but
Produce
it's a
Stand.
great thing that you started, and hopefully it catches on. I mean, sometimes it takes time for things like that. I know, isn't there another one now
Oh, there's
in
about
another
20
town?
of them. Yeah, there's about
Okay,
20
so
of
they
them
are starting to pick up.
all over the US. Yep. Little
That's
Free
awesome,
Produce Stand.
and that's
Yeah.
something you started.
Yeah, we started it right here under my maple tree, and there's 3 of them right here in Watertown. They're in Florida, they're in Vermont, they're in Seattle. So I don't know of any others outside the U.S. yet.
Hey, but there's still time and
Yeah.
opportunity for that. So that's awesome. That's a great thing that you did. So keep up the good work, Lee. You're just a good person. The world needs more Lee Bruns.
Oh,
So
wait till they find the bodies. It's gonna be a scandal,
right,
Dan.
it's good.
Oh,
Yep, they're gonna be like, oh man, that Lee Bruns,
yeah.
he's
We saw this. We expected it.
yep,
Yeah.
we saw it coming. All right, we didn't get any questions. We did get a comment from Facebook user who is actually Darren. Says great interview with Lee. Thank you, Darren. Thank you for tuning in. He always watches it in the Facebook group. That's why he always comes anonymous. For some reason, StreamYard doesn't like Facebook groups.
Oh.
Or doesn't like to reveal the identity of people watching in Facebook groups. So, all right. Well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions coming in. So, for the people that tuned in tonight, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you, Lee. This has been fantastic. I'm glad that we finally had the opportunity to have you on the podcast. Now you can stop listening to the podcast. You achieved your goal. No.
Yeah. I made it.
All right. This has been great. Again, if you want to find out more about Lee, go check out his website, leebruns.com. That's going to do it for this episode of The Art of Bombing. Thank you for tuning in and have a great night and a great rest of your week.
It's the art of bombing.